Welcome to another edition of Boomer Bongo Boulevard. I'm Mike, just Mike. Along with me is my brother, Ron, just Ron. He's right there with his beautiful face hanging out. This is season 2, Ron, episode 18. And we are going to be, hey, by the way, don't forget to subscribe. I can never think of the word subscribe, but don't forget to hit that button to subscribe. We're up to, last time I checked, we got that 31st subscriber, Ron, and now we're on our way to 35.
Smash it.
Yeah, smash it. Let's get to 35. And, of course, we're really
or
doing
touch
this.
it lovingly, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, caress it if you want. But we're doing this for, our everybody who's interested in boomer memories and boomer things, but also for Hubert and Steve and Don and that anonymous poster who keeps posting and asking questions. And that anonymous poster wants us to do a show on the Dave Clark 5 sometime soon. And we will, but I got to tell you, there's some backstory on the Dave Clark 5. I don't know if they want to hear, but we'll certainly do it. All right. But tonight we're doing, or today, actually this afternoon, we're doing, what are we talking about, Ron? We're talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, right?
Yes, and people do their snub lists. They do top 100, top 20 stuff. We're just going to go with three that we personally feel strongly about. And to go along with our obvious pick, which I'm sure everyone who has watched this show knows would be the Monkees. That's our most obvious pick. But it's not one of the ones we're going to talk about very much. That's just the one that, that to me is that's my number one worst. Always.
Oh, yeah. Well, once again, the snubs, the people who haven't been in, hey, we've got a villain for this. We're not going to use his name. He's a former big honcho with Rolling Stone magazine, but we just like him so strongly that we're just going to call him by our nickname, the Wiener. And he gets most of the blame for keeping a lot of folks out. And he had a big objection to the Monkees. And, I guess because they were a manufactured band, but, it's such sitting there and objecting to the Monkees is, and saying, hey, they shouldn't be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because they had auditions and because they didn't play their own instruments at the beginning on the first few recordings, because it's not because they weren't musicians. They all were. Peter,
there's been plenty of bands that had auditions for certain members as well.
Right. And what's the difference in, hey, we're looking for a drummer. We're having auditions tomorrow.
I'm pretty sure that band's in there.
Yeah. And all bands get formed different ways. And to me, the way the Monkees were formed was one of the most remarkable things about them. They
kind of against all odds.
Yeah, they came out of the ashes of, let's face it, a television program that was on for only 2 years. And yet, when you start talking about total sales and hit records and their influence on even their influence on other rock musicians, the Monkees are up there with the upper echelon, not just the middle ground, the artists that other artists like or anything like that. They're up there with in the millions and millions and millions of record sales and number one records and dominating the charts for a short period of time and longevity. They obviously developed a relationship with each other the same way you would if you grew up next door to somebody. But that's one of the huge snubs of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And none of the alleged cool kids or actual cool kids of rock and roll certainly didn't mind hanging out with them.
They were a lot of the Beatles, John Lennon, Paul McCartney have a lot of nice things to say about the Monkees, even back when they were starting out. And it's just it's just kind of a subject, but they're not who we're talking about today. We will just return to that constantly. Hey, and Ron, it's not like we care about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's lost its relevance.
Yeah, it really has.
A long time ago. But we hate to see good artists get snubbed, and we hate to see great artists. I hate to see them miss out on the jam session. I hate to see how many rock and roll artists who are established kind of have sold out to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame who show up. I would think if they were real rebels and people who fight the man, they would have started boycotting the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame decades ago. But that's never happened. So,
Yeah.
so it does kind of make you mad for a lot of reasons. And I'll tell you what, Ron, I'm never going. I'm boycotting because honestly, I just don't want to go to Cleveland, Ohio. So, nothing else. I say that. So who you got? Who you want to start us off with? What is
I will start
particularly?
out with one. I was just thinking about different bands I like, the ones I like to listen to. And this one really jumped out at me because to me they were really original. They, didn't sound like anybody else. That's kind of trying to think of things that would put you in, allegedly. And they had a short life, but so did a lot of bands that are in there. Their lifespan was they played together for a long time. Well, some of them did, but their main hit making time was 1967 to 1972. And I am talking about Steppenwolf.
Yeah. Hey, Ron, Steppenwolf should be in there for one song, Born to Be Wild.
The funny thing is that song is actually in the Hall of Fame. The song got inducted in 2018. That's the first year they ever started inducting singles into the Hall of Fame. And it was in the initial class of singles, Born to Be Wild, 2018. And they were nominated once, but they didn't get in. They got nominated in 2017 and didn't get in. But, they had 7 gold albums, 13 top 100 hits, 7 top 40, 3 top 10. The 3 top 10 were, Born to Be Wild, Magic Carpet Ride, and Rock Me, and a lot of amazing songs. To me, they were almost like a biker gang that all of a sudden picked up instruments or something. That's kind of the way they sounded, and that's the way they looked.
Well, and they get credit. I don't know if they really were the first to do it, but they're credited with having the first use of the term heavy metal.
Yep.
From Born to Be Wild. Heavy metal thunder.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. And
now I didn't realize that our old guy we've talked about many times, he keeps popping up. Hoyt Axton wrote one of their hits.
What was that? The Pusher?
The Pusher.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It wasn't really it was an album cut, but it was an underground
FM
radio station.
It was one of their it was one of their hits. That was I was a little shocked. I was like, and then when I start thinking about the lyrics, I'm going, it sounds like Hoyt Axton. Start thinking about it.
It had to been. It never got any TV play, never got any radio play because you have to delete the whole song. But but beep boop, beep boop, beep boop, the Pusher man. Boop,
boy, that was one of the biggest anti-drug songs ever.
Yeah.
Probably the only anti-drug song in the '60s.
Well, they had another album cut that was anti-drug doves called Snowblind Friend.
Also written by, guess who?
Hoyt Axton.
Hoyt Axton.
I've actually got a mention of Hoyt Axton here. By the way, Hoyt Axton, great songwriter, pretty good singer in his own right, is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah. And but he's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
No, he's not. And wrote some classics.
His I can't remember what his mother was a songwriter, and she wrote I cannot remember any particular song she wrote, but it was an Elvis Presley song. Mm-hmm. It wasn't Jailhouse Rock, but it was something like that. It was one of the early Elvis Presley hits, and Hoyt Axton's mother wrote it. So come on, if your mother is a rock and roll songwriter, shouldn't you be? I'm just for that alone. Nobody else got.
All right, who you got, man?
I'm right. Well, look, this is my number one snub, but I'm going to go and start with it because it's just so much fun when you think about it. And the biggest snub by far, it's not even close to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The biggest snub is the city of Memphis, Tennessee, because there's no way on God's green earth the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ought to be in Cleveland, freaking Ohio. Probably got some neighborhoods where you'd love to live, but What city is made fun of more than Cleveland, Ohio? If you look up a list of famous rock stars from Cleveland, it's about 3 or 4, and you're like,
Why is it in Cleveland exactly? I'm
it's
not
in
even sure.
Cleveland. Ron, it's
Is
because
it
of
something to do with the radio station or
no,
something? That
Ron,
first,
no. That's the excuse they gave. There was
yeah,
some disc jockey there who
yeah,
supposedly coined the term rock and roll. Of course, he
yeah.
didn't, but supposedly did it, and he really pushed rock and roll. I'm not even going to name him because the story's ludicrous. But they, that like a lot of stuff that the Wieners involved in, it was money. It was bottom line.
Yeah.
Cleveland got together $65 million back in the day when a million was a million. By the way, I'm wearing my super dark glasses because this is rock and roll episode, and I
Hey.
slipped those on. I don't know if you noticed that or not. But they got together $65 million, and they just kind of bought it.
Kind of bought
They're
it.
like,
Yeah.
here's what we have, a big pot of money to put it here. And a lot of the great rock stars have really wouldn't set footing. Ron, there's a picture in a local magazine. I should have saved it, didn't, of something going on in Cleveland, Mississippi, which has more of a claim to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame than Cleveland, Ohio does. And they were having a little exhibit. And guess who was standing right there at the exhibit, just soaking in all the blues and early rock? And Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger in Cleveland,
Wow.
Mississippi shows up on his own. I'm telling you, you're more likely to see a superstar of rock in Cleveland, Mississippi than you are in Cleveland, Ohio. And Memphis just got snubbed. Now, I'll tell you something else, Ron. I'm getting pretty mad about this. But what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ought to do, if they had any integrity at all, they ought to pick up and take their talents, like LeBron James did, take their talents to another city and go to Memphis, Tennessee, the home of rock and roll, Elvis's permanent home. Elvis Presley living in Memphis is enough to make it the home of rock.
I'm
But
digging the
everybody's
outside the box thinking.
what? What?
I said I'm digging the outside the box thinking on your.
Oh, man. Hey, you know what Memphis should do? When I was coaching track, let me tell you what I did one time. We went to this. There was this big track meet down in the southern part of the state. And it was a big deal. And I was a young coach, and I had only been coaching, about a year. And but my one big accomplishment, my first year of coaching track, was we went to this meet, and all the kids wanted to go. I didn't even want to go to it. It was a little, just for various reasons, I didn't really want to go. But all my athletes were, we got to go. We go every year. It's fun. We like this meet. Our parents all come to the meet. I go, okay, we'll go to the meet. I'm not going to name the school, but. So we go to the meet, and we won it. We won the meet as a team.
Yeah.
That's the first time I ever had a team that won a track meet. It was about the 4th or 5th meet of the season, and we won the meet. This school where I was coaching, they'd never won a track meet before, never even been close. We won the meet. We won it big. So the next year, in the spring, early winter, late winter, I guess, January, I guess the middle of winter, when everybody's getting their meets organized and you're writing letters, and you used to have to call people and stuff. Now you do it all on the internet.
Yeah.
But we were going to go to this meet again, and I don't hear from them. And I don't hear from them. And I don't hear from them.
Didn't want you
time's
there.
going long, and it's early March, and I don't hear from them. So I go to the school principal, and I tell them what's going on. I go, they didn't invite us because we won their stupid meet, and they don't want us to be there again. So could you give me a couple of $1,000s for some really nice medals and some really good stuff and ribbons and stuff? Because their meet, let's just say it was on March the 21st.
Yeah.
I don't remember when it was. Their meet's on March the 21st, and I want to have a meet here. We had our own track on March the 21st.
Yeah.
And I'm going to write letters to everybody that comes to their meet, and I'm going to tell them about all these nice medals we're going to have and what we're going to do for their kids. And so I did it.
Mm-hmm.
And guess who didn't have their meet that year? That school that didn't invite us. We had a meet. We had all the schools that were there. So what I think Memphis ought to do about this ultimate snub of not having the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, what Memphis ought to do is build another Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and have their induction ceremony on the same day as the Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and invite all those former people like Mick Jagger and Eric Clapton and all the greats in the history of rock and roll and all the recent greats, and maybe invite the Monkees well, I'm sorry, maybe invite Mickey Dolenz, bless the Monkees' heart, the rest of them, but have them in there and let's see who comes to the Cleveland, Ohio Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. That's what I think should happen. I'm done for the segment, Ron. You can have the rest of it. That was my speech for the day. That's what Memphis should do.
Well, earlier we were talking about, before we started the show, we were talking about how poorly women have historically been treated in the Rock and
because
Roll
of the
Hall. They've
wiener.
been making up for it in the last about 5 years or so. But
blame it on the wiener, Ron.
Yeah, I will. I absolutely will. But there's one. At first, I thought there was two, but one of the women I was thinking about actually did get inducted, but the other one hasn't. And I know what people would say. They're going like, "Oh, she didn't write her own songs." So what? Linda Ronstadt's in there. She didn't write her songs either.
Right.
Aretha Franklin didn't write her song. There was a lot of Elvis didn't write songs. There's tons of people who didn't write their own songs.
Well, that was just the wiener's excuse.
I'm going to
they
talk
got to write
about
their own music.
Somebody who absolutely dominated the charts from the early '70s up to about the mid '80s, and that is Olivia Newton-John.
There we go.
15.
And she definitely had some rock style songs.
15 top 10 hits, 5 number ones, 14 gold albums. How many? I think she's got 4 Grammys. Her first number one was her first big hit was 1973. "Let Me Be There." Let me be there.
Oh, it definitely had a
She was active. She was active until she died in 2022. But her big years was about 73 to 85. That's a pretty good run.
Sure.
Being right at the top. And, they weren't all great, but she was also in movies as well.
Sure.
And had tons of hits from those soundtracks.
Right. Xanadu. And a lot of these songs aren't great songs, but they were hit songs. I mean, I don't particularly like Xanadu, but, Grease, which a lot of those are inarguably a lot of fun and exemplify 50s rock, which is kind of the real birth of rock and roll.
Exactly.
When people noticed that rock and roll was there.
Yeah. I mean, she was, she was dominant. That's I thought that's what you looked for. Innovative, dominance,
Ready for my next one?
And it was in a lot of genres too. She had country hits, she had pop hits, crossover. All her hits early on were crossovers from country and pop, and even got a little harder edge to some of them later on.
She did. She did. She definitely could bring a rock song and prominent artists. And I don't disagree with that at all. Listen, Ron, I've got another snub. My first one was Memphis. My second one, the second snub, big snub, is once again one I knew you wouldn't have. Common Sense. They snubbed Common Sense by putting rap artists and country artists. We talked about Dolly Parton and Willie Nelson.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Common Sense. No, the rule should be rock and roll artists only. Make your argument for rock and roll, but don't say something like, well, they're in a field that contributed to rock and roll. No, I don't want to hear that because that makes Beethoven eligible. Right? And if you're going to do that, let's start back in the old timers and do Beethoven and Mozart and those guys because they contributed too. And
Rock me Amadeus.
What?
I said, "Rock me Amadeus."
Rock me Amadeus. Sure, and songs based on those guys.
Yeah, that's what Amadeus in there. What the hell?
But the rule should be other people that are non-rock and roll people can start going in when all the deserving rock people have gone in. And they're not even close to getting the deserving rock people in. Plus, they're not in Memphis. So, got two things. Common Sense and Memphis have been just excluded from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, the ones who are on the board now that the Wiener's not on there, they've got a chance to make some things right. And, hey, let's do it before some of these artists are still alive.
Yeah.
Instead of Pete Rose in it, like the Major League Baseball did. Pete Rose in now, nobody cares. If they can't be there and enjoy it, I don't really want to see it. I don't want to see their second cousin up there.
In football, they do, they do the regular class, and then they have like the veterans and stuff, so they pick up some of those guys that were way back that got
way
skipped.
back there.
Yeah,
And then they can do, and I say put Mozart and Beethoven in before you start putting,
yeah,
some of the country, and I love country music sometimes.
yeah.
But sometimes I don't. It's like everything else. But before you really, country has certainly contributed to rock and roll. Definitely, particularly the reliance on the guitars and all that. But I'm not going to make all that argument and explanation. But country's country. That's why it has its own genre. That's why it is over here to the side. Rap is rap. It's over here on the other side. And you got some people that cross back and forth. Maybe Kid Rock. He goes between rap and country and rock and roll. But of course, I don't think. Anyway, go ahead. What do you got next? What is your third?
They were short lived, but wow, they were. Like I said, hey, Cream's in there. What they do, like one album?
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix, and he died, but what did he do, like two? I mean,
well, Hendrix was Hendrix, though. I mean, I don't have any problem with Hendrix being in there.
No, I don't have a problem with him either. And this is why I wouldn't have a problem with these guys, because these guys were super innovative. I mean, they had a lot of great songs in a very short time. Blood, Sweat, and Tears was incredible.
Oh, yeah. And innovative.
There was nobody like that when they came along. Nobody had ever heard anything like that.
They were rock and roll.
Rock fusion like that. Nobody had done that.
Yeah. They just
from Chicago,
Right. They were kind of, I always kind of grouped them with Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And they just remind me
of them mixed up with Chicago, I think.
The horns and and rock songs that were definitely rock songs, but weren't quite in the lane of most rock songs.
They just said, it was oddball beats for a lot of them, like dun 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 dun.
Sure. These guys were awesome. Hey, I do have one band. I talked about them last week. I have Steppenwolf, by the way. Now, I just wrote one song down for Steppenwolf. I just put just for Born to Be Wild. Sometimes you go in just because of one thing you did. Peter Frampton is in the Hall of Fame. I think there was some resistance for a while, but Peter Frampton went in finally. And I'm like, of course, because Frampton comes alive. That's enough right there. I don't care if he never did anything else but hum nursery rhymes to himself before and after that. That one album was enough. Born to Be Wild is enough. But this one I mentioned last week, Three Dog Night.
Yeah.
Three Dog Night. Hoyt Axton, by the way, wrote a couple of hits.
Several of their songs, yeah.
Yeah, several of their songs.
Randy Newman.
Randy Newman wrote Mama Told Me Not to Come. Hoyt Axton wrote Never Been to Spain, which is one of my all-time favorite songs because I love I've never been to Spain, but I've been to Oklahoma.
Yeah. That's how you know it's the Hoyt Axton song.
And Celebrate. Another ballad that was, I don't even know if this was a single, but I think it was. It was certainly an album cover. Pieces of April. If any of you out there,
so many hits. Many.
If you've never heard Pieces of April, listen to it. It's just one of those songs. Sometimes to some people they hear it and they're like, that might be my favorite song I've ever heard. And Eli's Coming.
Yeah.
Which is as rocking gets. That's what I love about them is when they did rock, and they rocked a lot, they really rocked out. And they knew how to do it, and they did it with harmony that would make Brian Wilson jealous. By the way, tip of the hat to Brian Wilson, who died this week, bless his heart. The Beach Boys, the final Wilson boy, and nobody left now but Al Jardine and Mike, whatever his name is, that dances funny and whatever. But but going back to it, Three Dog Night. I've never been to Spain. Celebrate, Pieces of April. One.
Yeah.
Boy, it seems like their songs were so original. They didn't write. They recruited writers, but maybe they hold that against them. I know that was considered a big thing.
Story about not read about. I watched a video, a podcast about Three Dog Night, and they were talking about, and they were talking to some of them, and they were talking about where Joy to the World came from.
Oh yeah,
their biggest hit. Hoyt Axton had actually written that song for some cartoon It was about like a frog or something,
But
you know,
Jeremiah was a
some
bull.
kind of weird cartoon. The cartoon never took off,
Right.
and they some of the other guys were like turning him down at first because they were like going, hey, well, we don't really want any of this stuff. And he came back. He was, you know, he just trying to sell a song, you know, sell his wares, you know. Who's the guy that was the lead singer? I can't remember. I never can remember his first name. His last name's Negron, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck Negron, I think.
I
Maybe.
think that might be right.
I can't remember. But anyway, he he came to him and he liked it. And he like talked to other, come on guys, you know, I think this
Fun.
could work, and you know, and they kind
Fun
of
song.
reworked it a little bit, but yeah, you know, because it's kind of different, you know, and
Sure.
but it was one that, you know, they had no idea how big it was going to be,
Hey,
you know?
well, and it appealed to little kids.
Yeah,
That might have annoyed him a little bit. I remember being at a high
yeah.
school
Oh
dance
yeah,
years ago.
I loved that song when I was a little kid, you know.
I got roped into. I almost never did this, but I somehow got roped into chaperoning a high school dance, and several years ago, and they were just a bunch of old local guys, 40 years old, Potbellies band that they'd hired, and
Yeah,
garage band. And the guy didn't know many songs. They were pretty good on what they played,
yeah.
but they must play "Joy to the World" like 30 times because the kids all liked it. When it was a fairly recent, and the
Yeah.
kids all liked that song, and so they would just when things got a little dull at the dance, they would just break into "Joy to the World" again.
Well, what a better
It was
start than
fun.
Jeremiah was a
Oh,
bullfrog? I mean, that
oh,
gets your
sure.
attention, you know.
He was a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
Never understood
He
a single
drinks
word.
wine, you know. I mean, he's a cool guy.
That's the thing. A
He smokes
bulldog,
cigars. He bets on football. I mean,
yeah, a bullfrog with wine. I mean,
yeah,
isn't that really the thing that is kind of weird about that song? Is there was this bullfrog with a wine cellar apparently,
yeah.
and this guy met
But
up
you
with
didn't
him.
think anything about it, you know. It's just it
Hey,
was a bullfrog.
well,
And when you're a kid, you're like, hey, bullfrog.
why wouldn't you be impressed with that? I think. Got anything else? I guess we made fun of the wiener. And
Well, you know, did you just real quickly when you were kind of researching some of this? Did you, you know, I know you probably had a few in mind, which that's what I
right,
did. I
yeah,
had
yeah.
several in mind, but
Oh,
then I was going through some of these lists and I ran across a few people and I'm like, really? You know,
yeah,
when I
oh
saw
yeah, oh
different
yeah.
people, like there was a few that made me do that, and one I remember that caught my eye that I went, "You got to be kidding me!" Was another woman, Diana Ross
Oh yeah, yeah.
is not, and she's in, you know, with the Supremes, but wow, she had tons of hits on her
It's
own.
she's supposedly kind of hard to get along with sometimes, but maybe
Oh.
that had something to do with it because apparently the wiener kind of based a lot of who he was pushing by
Yeah,
how much he liked him or didn't like him or how they treated him or whether they were mean to him or snubbed him, which shouldn't
yeah,
go into it at all, but it did. And you know what's weird is I was watching a video not long ago, and Brian Wilson. I was thinking about Brian Wilson. I
mhm,
looked up they had one of those tributes to Brian Wilson, and other people were being honored.
yeah,
And I was watching some of the performers doing tributes to Brian Wilson, and apparently they'd done a tribute to Diana Ross earlier in the evening, but this was only about a 12, 15
mhm,
minute snippet. But she was sitting by Brian Wilson up in the balcony area where
yeah,
they sit up and observe. I'm sure almost everybody's seen it, and she was so much fun. She was smiling and
yeah,
dancing and like pushing Brian on the shoulder affectionately when he would start singing along and stuff like that. And I'm thinking,
yeah,
well, you know what? She may be hard to get along with sometimes, but I can see where somebody would just love having her around when she's like that because
yeah,
she had no qualms about having a good time. And I just
yeah,
really liked her. First time I'd ever really I liked her music for a long time,
yeah.
but it was the first time I ever really liked her. And I thought, boy, she ought to be like that more often and let people see that side of her. But of course, her daughter is a great comic actress. So,
Oh yeah, yeah,
maybe that's where it comes from
yeah.
is Diana
Well,
Ross
yeah, and,
probably
and
has
I
a
saw her
good sense of
perform
humor.
several concerts, like on television, so like on HBO and things like that. And she seemed like she was always having a blast.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
You
yeah.
know,
Loved her.
very personable and you know really connected with the audience very well. And
I mean, I've heard she's one of these people. And I think she is when when she's appearing somewhere, nobody's supposed to look her in the eye,
Yeah.
and though that rule is so common among. I'm wondering if there isn't a fairly legitimate reason for it. It's one of those things when you actually get there, you look around and go, "Oh, no wonder they have that rule." And so I've almost changed my mind about it. And she's not there to, an entertainer's not there to make friends. They're not going to
I
be your
wouldn't be a
friends.
good famous person.
Yeah,
I
no,
know I wouldn't,
yeah, I probably
because
wouldn't be either.
I don't like um I don't like a lot of attention and stuff.
Well, I kid around, but I'm not going to. I tell people, I expend a great deal of energy and have my whole life avoiding fame. I just, it doesn't seem like much fun to me. And although
I
I
would
like
like
to,
to perform when it's
yeah,
time to do
oh
something.
yeah,
I don't mind doing that, but it's the thing of having to if you don't feel like it.
yeah, yeah. Well, Rhonda, we could talk a lot more about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because there's just lists and lists and lists. I
Oh
do
yeah.
suggest anybody that's looking for, that likes to piddle around on the internet and they've never done any research into the folks who have been snubbed by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I encourage you, put in that search. You're going to have a lot of reading to do for the rest of the evening. There are articles written about it. There are just
Yeah.
lists that are fun to look at, or maybe disappointing to look at in a way. But maybe the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, although, like I said, very little credibility left, and I don't care about it too much anymore. But maybe they'll start getting a few things right, and I can change. I'm certainly capable of changing my
All I
mind.
know for sure is I'll never be in it. So
Yeah, we're not making the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but hey,
one less thing,
can't do everything. Yeah, yeah. Can't put that on the check that
Right.
off on the bucket list. All right, Ron. See you next time.
All right.